Things are all super positive for our economy going forward, and every American is going to benefit from that.
But you're one of his key surrogates who's argued the economy helped him win the election. This is an unusual place for him to be in, where he's getting bad numbers on the economy. Why do you think that is?
Well, I think it's because he had the courage to take on this incredible imbalance that we have. The U.S. had the most open economy in the world, the largest economy in the world, and even our allies had their economies closed to us. And so we really had fundamentally unfair and unbalanced trade, and he's trying to rectify that. And right now, the White House, at record speed, is engaged in 35 different bilateral, country-to-country, one-on-one trade deals. And every single one of those, the U.S. is going to come out better than where we started, because the premise here is that none of these deals are going to be worse than the U.S. than where we were before. It's only getting better from here.
Well, I'm glad you brought that up, because obviously, I mean, tariffs is one thing he made very clear on the campaign trail he was going to do. Maybe people didn't believe him. But he wrote yesterday that many people's income taxes will be substantially reduced, maybe even completely eliminated once the revenue from the tariffs comes in. But if you're making deals with countries and you're going to lower those tariffs, how are you going to have the revenue to cover people's income taxes?
Well, there is going to be revenue two ways. One, in terms of just increased trade, because if we have markets that are open to U.S. company and more things that are built here, that's a positive for America, because income taxes are one form of tax, but there's also many other forms of revenue that the government can generate. And so I think—
Like what?
Well, certainly take a look at Interior. Under the Biden administration, revenue from using the balance sheet of America, the land and the resources that we have both onshore and offshore, were going down. And we have a tremendous opportunity through leasing of land for minerals, getting ourselves back in the mining. The war on mining is over with President Trump. The war on timber is over under President Trump. The war on oil and gas is over. All this thing is over, and now we're seeing investment coming back. And in those cases, those companies will buy a lease, they write a check to the federal government, and then when they develop that resource, they pay a royalty.
But that's not the argument he's making here. He's saying that the tariffs will generate so much revenue that people in a certain income level will not have to pay taxes. I mean, if you look at the numbers, the tariffs would have to be 4 times what they are now to actually make up for that. I think some people look at that and say the math does not add up.
Well, I think when you're taking a look at the opportunity that we have to balance trade, and companies that have had free access to our market, even at the 10% level, this is producing billions of dollars a day for America if those stay in place. If they don't stay in place, because we end up with free and fair trade, we know that America can compete with anyone. And if we start building and manufacturing products here, as opposed to outsourcing that to around the world, that's going to strengthen every community, create more high-paying jobs. And with the advent of AI coming, that's another thing where we've got to have the energy to be able to produce the electricity to win the AI arms race. President Trump very focused on that.
You're not the Treasury Secretary or Peter Navarro, the trade advisor, but do you know of any trade agreements that they are close to actually closing in on, and not just top lines, a memorandum of understanding?
Well, I know that they're very focused in taking a look at those 35, who is ready to come to the table. The top half of those 35 have been broken into 3 tiers, and these folks are working around the clock over the weekends to get trade deals. And I think for President Trump, you're going to see one trade deal after another announced. When you start walking through 100 announcements with 100 different countries, and every single one of those we end up with a better trade deal than we have right now. I mean, how can anybody say that's not a good deal for this country? But again, the courage to actually take on a completely unfair global trading system. It takes, President Trump was courageous in his first term. Now he's fearless this time around, and he's fearless in fighting for every American, because these things will benefit our economy and will benefit every American.
I mean, he's arguing that he's made 200 trade deals so far.
Well, there is all kinds of countries, that are showing up at the doorstep because they understand America is serious about leveling the trade issues right now.
Can I ask you, because you mentioned if the tariffs stay in place, what that would look like, the revenue that you believe it could generate. Tonight, the Wall Street Journal is reporting that he's expected to peel back some of the tariffs on automakers. So essentially, they're not paying tariffs on top of other tariffs if it's on steel and aluminum imports. Certainly a relief to those automakers. But I wonder, those people obviously have a direct line to the West Wing. So does Tim Cook of Apple. What do you say to small business owners who look at that and say, the big companies are getting a break, but we, because we're small businesses, are not?
Well, I don't know that that's I mean, that's an assumption that I can't, a hypothetical I can't agree with, because I know that, again, if a small retailer is buying goods and selling goods that is made in the United States, tariffs aren't part of their life. There are no tariffs on products made in the United States. You know, if you're a large retailer and you're getting a lot of your products made in China, yeah, you're going to have to deal with a different cost structure.
But some small businesses get parts of products that they make from overseas and whatnot, and so the tariffs are affecting them. We've seen this with people who make strollers or bicycles, for example.
Well, I think every American now, during COVID, they had their first understanding that supply chains matter and what countries they come from. And now, as we have this discussion about, and people starting to realize how unfair the trade balance has been, that they're starting to understand that maybe it would be a good thing that if we were actually making things in America, and that's a positive thing. Positive things for everybody, including small business on Main Street.
Well, as a former businessman, I wonder, do you get calls from old friends and acquaintances asking for help with the president?
Well, absolutely. I think that we, as someone who's been involved in business my whole life, we're hearing from a lot of different sectors. And of course, every sector depends on energy. President Trump has wisely kept energy out of all of these tariff discussions because he knows that both for us to be able to sell energy to our friends and allies, stop our adversaries from funding those wars against us, whether it's Russia funding their war against Ukraine or whether it's Iran funding 24 terror groups, all of them doing that. Because the Biden administration was like, we're going to shut down U.S. energy. We're going to buy our energy from our adversaries. That was a policy that is, any country that does not have their own energy security has no national security. President Trump is putting us back on a path where part of the core affordability of any industry is we've got to have low-cost energy in this country. And one way you do that is increase supply. And whether it's minerals, whether it's electricity, whether it's liquid fuels, we're on the path right now. And what has been accomplished in the first 100 days, permitting, taking 2-year permitting, bringing it down to 1 month, bringing back baseload electricity in this country.
Yeah, we did see oil production at an all-time high under President Biden. He didn't tout it that often, but Secretary Burgum...
Well, he did because of the permitting that happened under President Trump. I mean, all-time record oil production under Biden was because of Trump. It was in spite of Biden. I was running a state that was a natural resources state, and we were fighting the federal government. The federal government wasn't even holding the legally required lease sales during the Biden administration. First president since Harry Truman was Biden that didn't hold those lease sales. So for them to take credit, that was all because...
Well, they didn't take credit because it wasn't very popular with their voters. Secretary Burgum...
Affordable electricity is popular with everyone, and America needs to make sure we don't lose the thing. I mean, take a look what's happening in Europe right now with this 60 million people in a brownout blackout. We came very close to that happening in America because the Biden administration policy so dangerously eroded baseload in favor of having unreliable intermittent sources. And so we're just fortunate that we're not where Europe is right now, and we don't want to go there. Germany spent $500 billion to go chase a green path. And they ended up with electricity that cost 3 times as much, and they're producing 20% less.
Secretary Doug Burgum, always great to have you. Thanks for joining us on Set Tonight.
Great to be here.
Joining us to drill down on the rest of the new CNN polling and more generally size out the administration going to the 100th day. CNN's Harry Enton, also CNN political commentators Elizabeth Griffin and David Axelrod. So, David, according to the Journal, the president is expected to back down on some of the tariffs. Will it hurt? I mean, for negotiating, I mean, what do you think the viewpoint is around the world of this president and his actual negotiating skills on trade deals?
Well, pretty obviously, the world is baffled, as is the business community. The economy has been impacted by that. The markets have reacted to that. But Anderson, the thing that people most voted for Donald Trump to do was to reduce costs. These tariffs are going to raise costs, and automobiles are a big component of that. So it's not surprising to me that he has to bail out of this one. It's so interesting to me when you look back at the Biden administration and you look back at polling, and Harry Enton can speak to this. You look back to that withdrawal from Afghanistan that shambolic withdrawal from Afghanistan. And Biden's numbers took a big hit, and they never recovered. And you wonder whether April 2nd, you know, what he called Liberation Day, but for the markets was kind of Incineration Day. You look back at, we wonder whether you look back at that, and what you find is that was the beginning of the end, that he never recovers, because these economic numbers are devastating. So I see this as